We're going to find the absolute maximum and absolute minimum value of f on the given closed interval of f of t. And the closed interval is from -1 to 2. We're going to use the closed interval method. And the first step is to find the critical numbers of f in the open interval a comma b. So this is your critical number, and that's what we're going to do first. So we first have to find the derivative of f of t. So f prime of t. Use the product rule and the chain rule. So we're going to write down your first term is t, and we're going to also write this right here as 4 minus t squared to the 1/2 power. So when you do that, you take the derivative, you're going to get times 1/2, and then you write down 4 minus t squared, and then this is going to be -1/2, and then the inner part's going to be -2t. All right, then you do plus, and then you just copy down the second term, which is going to be 4 minus t squared to the 1/2 power times the derivative of t, which is just 1. Now this one, the algebra is going to be a little tricky, so let's just clean it up a bit because we have to find the critical numbers. Let's clean this up. So basically, this part, these two cancels because 2 times 1/2 is just 1. So we have t times t, and it's negative. So we're going to get negative t squared. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in the denominator, which is going to be 4 minus t squared to the 1/2. All right, and then plus 4 minus t to the 1/2 times 1. So this would be over 1. Now what I want to do is get the common denominator. So I want my common denominator to be this part. So I'm going to go ahead and put this under here and multiply both of the numerator and denominator by this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this as 4 minus t squared to the 1/2. But if I put it here, I also have to put it here. All right, so we have our common denominator. Now looking at this, this is like for your exponents, if you have, let me do a different color. If you have a to the 1/2 times a to the 1/2, you add these two up, and that gives you 1. So that's just going to give you a to the first power. So let's copy this down again, negative t squared. And my common denominator is going to be 4 minus t squared to the 1/2. And now when I multiply these two, I'm just going to, oh, these should be t squareds. These should be squares right there. Okay, so then you're just going to get plus 4 minus t squared. All right, now that's going to give you negative 2t squared, so I'll just put 4 minus 2t squared. And if you want, you can go ahead and write the denominator now as 4 square root of 4 minus t squared. And then you set this to 0. So in here, the algebra is a little tricky, but after that, it's okay. Now, remember, for critical values, we want the domain of f to be either f prime of c equals 0 or f prime of c does not exist. So let me try to fit that in here. If I set the numerator to 0, we get 4 equals 2t squared. So t squared equals 2. So t equals plus or minus square root of 2. We can't take the negative because negative square root of 2 equals negative 1.41, and that's not in our closed interval. So we have to disregard the negative 2. So I'm going to take that part out. Let us leave it in. So t is just going to be square root of 2. Now for the denominator, if we set, we can't have the denominator 0. So if 4 minus t squared equals 0, it doesn't exist. We have t equals plus or minus 2 here. Again, negative 2 is not in the interval because we only go to negative 1 here. So again, it is a critical number because it does not exist. So my two critical numbers are going to be t equals square root of 2 and t equals 2. All right, because it doesn't exist, but it's still a critical number. Now, after that, we're going to check our endpoints. So we're going to find the values of f at the endpoints of the interval. That part's pretty easy. So we want to do f of negative 1. So f of negative 1 is going to be negative 1 times the square root of 4 minus the square root, or negative 1 squared. And this is going to equal negative square root of 3. When I plug in 2, the upper bound, I'm going to get 2 times the square root of 4 minus 4, which equals 0. Now, I'm going to plug in my critical numbers. Again, my critical numbers were t equals 2 and t equals square root of 2. And we already did 2, so all we have to do is square root of 2. So f of square root of 2 equals square root of 2 times 4 minus square root of 2 squared, and that's going to give you 2, because you're going to get square root of 2 times the square root of 2. This is the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, which gives you 2. All right, so basically we're going to do step 3. The largest value is going to be our absolute maximum. So our largest value is going to be f of square root of 2 equals 2. So that's absolute maximum. And our minimum is the smallest number, and that's f of negative 1 equals negative square root of 3. That's like negative 1.73-ish, approximately. So that's going to be your absolute minimum. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.